He is live with us in Los Angeles as a SportsCenter special ready to go tomorrow night. But, of course, First Take is 15 minutes away. And Stephen A., first of all, good morning as always.
Good morning.
I just would like to ask Jen, I know you were there in the building on Saturday night in Toronto. What was your biggest takeaway from that game? Because Tibbs and I have been going back and forth on it a little bit this morning. What did you take away from that game?
Well, a couple of things. I got to give Coach, first of all, Masai Ujiri just deserves all the credit in the world. And Charles Barkley and I were talking about it post-game in terms of the level of coverage that he displayed. You know, you got a Coach of the Year in Dwayne Casey, who, by the way, I feel so sorry for, because I have no doubt in my mind that if he had Kawhi Leonard without having to go through LeBron James in the Eastern Conference, he'd be right where Nick Nurse is today. So, but you can't take any credit away from Nick Nurse and the phenomenal job that he did coaching his team and making the transition from putting Kawhi Leonard onto the Greek Freak come Game 3. That's number one. Masai Ujiri, the general manager, the president of basketball operations, rather, to fire the Coach of the Year after a 59-win season, and then to get rid of your best player in DeMar DeRozan for a guy that may only end up being in Toronto for 1 year. That takes incredible courage and incredible belief in yourself and what you can do as an executive. So he deserves so much credit. And then last but not least, you just look at a guy. I know Kyle Lowry is the name that comes to mind. Shot 50% from the field, a shot better than 40% from three-point range. Really showed up in the conference finals. He was definitely impressive. But I can't say enough about Fred VanVleet and what he meant to this team coming off the bench, particularly the last 3 games since his child was born. The guy was shooting like 82% from three-point range in the last 3 games. Hit 14 of 17 threes over the last 3 games. He was an absolute spark plug and a dynamo coming off the bench. And I believe if it were not for his efforts coming off the bench, that Toronto may have lost this series, because there was plenty of times where he stopped the bleeding. And you can't give him enough credit for what he did over these last 3 games.
Fair. And look, all the credit in the world to all those guys in Toronto. I agree. There has been some criticism here and in other places of the Bucks, and in particular of their coach, Mike Budenholzer, who might wind up being the Coach of the Year, and obviously did a great job there this year.
He did.
But with a 15-point lead late in the third quarter, their offense, I don't even know that it would be an insult to offense anywhere to call what they ran in offense for the last 16 minutes of that game. And DJ was critical of him taking Giannis out of the game in the third quarter with that big lead, taking him out at all. In DJ's words, I'll put words in his mouth, you kind of have to go for the jugular there and put that game away because your season is on the line. Did you have any issue with the way that game was handled on the Milwaukee bench?
Of course I did, because he didn't make any adjustments. He's my Coach of the Year. He's an exceptional coach. But I think it's 2 things that, people forget. Listen, he was once an assistant in San Antonio when Kawhi was there. That's number 1. Number 2, obviously Greg Popovich being a mentor and a big brother to a guy like Mike Budenholzer. I mean, if anybody would know Kawhi, it would be him. Come up with some remedy to kind of neutralize him. That's not what Budenholzer did in this particular series. But the biggest thing, it really wasn't about coaching, even though you can point to some of the things he could have done better, and there is no question he's still an exceptional coach, still my Coach of the Year. He can't make shots for these guys. Brook Lopez, he had some good moments, some bad. Mirotić was weak throughout this series. Ilyasova, he made a few shots, but ultimately wasn't as formidable as he could have been. And Bledsoe, don't get me started. I mean, this dude came in to like Game 5 shooting 10% from three-point range. That's 2 of 19 three-pointers. Many, many times throughout this series, they backed up off of him, and it appeared to be 4-on-5 basketball on the offensive end of the floor for the Milwaukee Bucks. They were operating at a disadvantage. And so when you look at it from that perspective, and you recognize the fact that Malcolm Brogdon was the only individual that seemed to be capable of making a play off the dribble other than the Greek Freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. This is a 24-year-old dude who's 6'11", who's basically a presence and a dominant presence in the interior. Get his behind down on a block. Do something there. But their scheme seemed to be let him dribble the ball, let him penetrate into the teeth of a defense. Even if there's 4 guys waiting for him, charge right into them and then try to kick it out to an open shooter. Those open shooters weren't making shots. The wall that Toronto presented was too much for him. And in the end, you also had one of the elite defenders this game has ever seen in Kawhi Leonard defending him over the last 4 games. So why would you ask him to dribble the ball? He's 24 years old. No matter how gifted he is, you're going up against Kawhi Leonard. One of the things you might not want to do against Kawhi is dribble the ball too much. These are the kind of things that I think Budenholzer should have seen. And unfortunately, either he didn't see it or he saw it and felt helpless against it because his other guys just weren't making shots.
All right, you and I are in agreement on almost all of that. Let me circle back then to Kawhi, because another conversation we've had here this morning, because he's such a difficult guy to know, is what, if any, impact do you believe the outcome of the next 2 weeks will have on his future? He's going to play in the NBA Finals, and then on July 1st, he's going to become a free agent. And, everyone has had him going back home to Los Angeles basically since this process began. How do you think whatever happens over the next few weeks influences what winds up happening with Kawhi?
The fair answer is I don't think any of us knows a damn thing about what Kawhi Leonard is going to do, outside of maybe his uncle, Dennis Robinson, who spoke to Yahoo Sports and gave some very poignant comments about him and why he ultimately ended up leaving San Antonio, why this is such a great moment for him. But we simply don't know because Kawhi Leonard doesn't give any kind of indication. Charles Barkley nicknamed him, accurately I might add, Cyborg. He shows no emotion. He walks up to me during warm-ups, Greeny, and gives me a piss. Hey, Stephen A. The same exact impression that he had while playing in the first quarter, the second, the third, and the fourth quarter. It never changes. You get no emotion. I mean, he should easily be called Spock Leonard. I mean, that's how he is. There's no emotion. I mean, that's what it is. And so, you don't know what he's going to do, but I will tell you this. Toronto is a fabulous city. I could do without the cold weather and the winters. They're right near Buffalo. I'm not down with that. And I'm sure him being a Southern California native, he probably is not going to be down with that as well. But I will tell you, most teams, actually all teams in the NBA, have a city behind them. This man has a country behind him. You've got Kawhi and Dine, where the restaurants have promised him free meals for life if he were to stay. The entire country of Canada has basically descended upon Toronto, and they all support him. He has been deified already. When you take that into consideration, that's not something that could be eclipsed if he were to end up joining the Clippers or the Lakers. Because if you join the Clippers, as much as I'm impressed with them, the Clippers brand in LA is what it is. And with the Lakers, LeBron is there. And so when you look at it from that perspective, if you care about that, then Toronto obviously would be an ideal place. Plus, it's not the Western Conference, it's the Eastern Conference. So there's an easier road to prosperity. But in the end, still in all, it's about what he wants, and no one has a clue. No one.
Well said. Stephen A. is 7 minutes away. First Take coming your way here on Memorial Day on ESPN. Thank you, Stephen.